Guys, it's the top of the hour. Why don't we get started? It's our wealth building podcast or wealth building event today. Just so much to talk about with all these new rules. So, Amanda, do you want to kick things off for us this afternoon and talk about what's new in taxes?
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah,
Or not. Or not. Or not.
Yes, I'll take a brief moment. Do you guys hear feedback on my end?
Can everybody make sure that you're muted if you're not talking?
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
better.
better. Yes. I was like, I keep seeing my voice twice. I think once is enough when we're talking about taxes. But yeah, well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Amanda Han, and my firm is called Keystone CPA, and we work with real estate investors nationwide on how to use real estate to save on taxes. And why do we care about saving taxes? Because taxes saved is the easiest money that you really have ever made, because you've already made the money, you already worked hard for it. So really, it's important to make sure we keep more of it and really utilize that to build wealth. And I'm so excited to be joined here with two of my really amazing friends and boss ladies, Bethany and Kaaren. And I'll pass the baton so they can introduce themselves. If you want to go, I don't know, Bethany, I guess you can go.
Absolutely. Thank you. Just a reminder, everyone, to mute yourselves when you come on so that we can hear all the good advice that Amanda and Kaaren are giving us. I'm Bethany LaFlam. I am the managing partner of Premier Law Group. We are your premier syndication attorneys. What that means is that we help you practice safe SEC when you are raising money to invest in real estate. So we make sure that you stay compliant, or on the flip side of that, if you are not quite ready to engage in SEC, we will help you abstain from practicing SEC on accident. So a lot of times people will come to me and ask me, how do I not actually be selling securities? So we help you there too. So we help real estate syndicators grow their empire by using OPM, other people's money.
And with that, I'm Kaaren Hall. Hi, I'm the CEO and founder of UDirect IRA Services, and we help people take their retirement account and invest it outside of Wall Street to boost their financial future. And self-directed IRAs are a huge way to raise capital, something like $40 trillion available for your deals in self-directed IRAs. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works and what's going on for 2024.
I love it.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that, we're all here, and feel free to put any questions you have into the chat box below. I think the order of how we'll go today is Bethany will go up first. Bethany's going to talk to us all about understanding syndications. She says her firm, Premier Law Group, is one of the leading experts on the syndication side. I think almost all of our large syndicator clients work with Bethany's firm, so we're in really good hands here. And then next up, after that will be Kaaren. She's going to talk about how do you leverage money in your retirement account? How do you use self-directed IRA money to invest in other people's deals, like syndications into multifamily, self-storage, all that good stuff. And I think I will round it out with tax benefits for passive investors, because believe it or not, there are tax benefits for passive investors who are investing in syndications, contrary to what you might hear from other CPAs who don't specialize in real estate. So I'll hand it over to you, Bethany. And like I said, for all of our attendees, go ahead and if you have questions, put into the chat box, and we'll try to answer them either as it pops up or at the end of the webinar today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda. So, we should really start off with, I think everybody on here knows, but just in case, if you want to know what the heck even is a syndication, and that's a good place to get started. And real estate syndication really is one of my favorite ways to build wealth. And that's what we're really talking about here is how do you build wealth? How do you grow wealth? How do you save that wealth? And so syndication is really, in the real estate context is where we are, as you have passive investors and active investors. And so a syndication is when an active investor, so a sponsor, a GP team, they're sometimes called, the manager, that is a group of people that are going to do all the work to go out and to do all the improvements and all the work around investing in real estate. And they do all the work. And then what they do is they'll go and find passive investors who put their money up and they put their money up with the expectation that they're not going to do any of the work, that they're going to rely on those active investors to do the work and generate a profit. So whenever you are raising capital from people who are passive and they expect a return based on your efforts, you've sold securities, you are then, you have to be compliant with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. So that a syndication is really a term that we use on the real estate side for just raising passive investments to then develop a property or to invest in and acquire a property. So that's a syndication. And why does the SEC even care about what you're doing? The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, it exists solely to protect investors from us, right? And why would they want to do that? They want to do that to make sure that when someone invests their money, that they're not being swindled out of their, their retirement accounts, for example. They're not being swindled out of other last dollars. So the government has put forth some regulations to say, okay, how do we try to protect investors from people who are then using their money? There are a lot of different, maybe some political conversations we could have about what the real goals are. But for today's purposes, we'll just talk about the SEC existing to protect investors. And so what does that mean? That means when you're selling securities, you've got a couple of options. Your first option when you're selling securities is you can register that security, that offering, right? Think Facebook, Microsoft, those kinds of things. Those are public offerings. You can go buy those stocks in a public offering. They're freely traded. Those types of investments don't really work in a real estate space for the most part because you don't have enough time and they're really expensive. It takes a long time. It costs a lot of money. It doesn't work for most real estate deals. So then we're going to look at option 2, which is finding an exemption from having to register. Most of our clients are living in the Regulation D. You've probably heard of 506B and 506C. Those are the 2 primary exemptions that most of our clients are going to be using. Probably most of you would be using if you're active investors. There are other exemptions, but those are the main 2 that we're gonna be looking at for our purposes. And those exemptions, really what they do is they say, hey, listen, if you are out there and you're raising capital from private investors, here are some requirements to keep you under the radar from having to register with the SEC. Most of that involves disclosures. So you might have heard of a private placement memorandum, for example. Private placement memorandums are these scary documents that tell investors or potential investors all the potential risks that you can think of about what could go wrong if they invest their money in this deal, right? So they're kind of scary documents. They're definitely not marketing documents for sure. But that is how you are able to go ahead and raise that money from passive investors without having to register those securities as a public offering. The third option is really not an option. It's illegal. You're probably going to jail. So let's pick option B and we'll stay under an exemption. And that's kind of where we live. And those exemptions are really not that onerous if you have good counsel and good advisors, a good CPA, all of those things, and you have access to all of those tools. So if you follow the advice of your advisors, it's really not that hard to go out and raise money. And a lot of people think, oh, Bethany, your job is to just write PPMs. No, that's actually not true. Our job is to help you be compliant with the SEC from the beginning to the end of your offering. So the SEC actually regulates the offer and the sale of securities. So everything you say to potential investors, the SEC could care about and wants to make sure that you're being compliant. And so we advise clients all the way from the very beginning of when they first find a property up until they've actually collected that last dollar. So a lot of questions that I end up answering throughout my day are things like, hey, what am I allowed to say on social media? What can I say in an email blast? Can I even do an email blast? So we help guide people through that entire process. And I'm going to say these things and you're going to probably have a bunch of questions. And I know we will have time for questions at the end, but also as Amanda mentioned, go ahead and put them in the chat. Like, what am I allowed to say or what am I not allowed to say? Whatever that is. So when you just remember that when you decide you're going to invest in real estate and you're going to use other people's money to help you do it and start, and I love that you could even do that, by the way. You can actually create a lot of wealth without putting a lot of your own capital in. So you don't have to start off rich. This is why I love Main Street versus Wall Street, is that you can do the work and actually create real wealth by leveraging other people's money through your own efforts. So I love this option. And so one of the things that I'm really passionate about is helping people create conscious wealth by kind of demystifying this process, which I know that Kaaren and Amanda are also very passionate about, which is actually one of the reasons we decided to do this together in the first place. So again, to recap really quickly, syndication is when an active investor leverages the resources of passive investors in order to create wealth through real estate, and then allows everybody to get sort of what they want out of that. There are some rules and regulations around it, but those don't have to be so scary. And we are here to help you through this process so that you can actually use this process to create wealth and not be scared of accidentally violating the law. And when I say, Mauricio and I, my partner Mauricio and I joke around all the time about, oh, we're going to help you stay out of jail, or if you don't follow the rules, you're going to jail. And the reality is you're here. And if you are trying to follow the rules, you're not going to go to jail, right? We're going to keep you out of trouble, and we're going to do all the things with you and alongside you and hold your hands through this process so that you don't have to worry about those kinds of things. You have to be actively trying to screw people over before you're going to jail. So I get this a lot when I speak in front of groups is people are like, no, that's too much. I don't want to do it. It's too scary. It's too much. And the thing that's really awesome about syndication is it allows you to scale your business and allows you to scale your wealth much further than you could possibly do on your own, just using your own money, your own balance sheet, your own credit, all those things. And so the thing that I always tell people is you can scale and build your empire by using OPE, other people's everything. So not just money, but all the other things that I just mentioned, right? The other people's credit, other people's expertise, like you've got in this room right here. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Kaaren, unless I think we'll capture questions at the end, or do you want me to do them real time?
We can capture questions at the end. I don't see that we have any, except just a couple people saying hi. Actually, no, George has a question. Do you see that there?
Oh, yeah. If I refer an investor A to another investor B and they fund a deal with investor B and I get a referral fee, is it enough to verbally disclose that I receive a referral fee? It's a really good question, George, and it's one that we get a lot. And the answer is that it's very tricky to even accept a referral fee, actually. One of the rules in raising capital is that in order to receive transactions-based compensation, which means compensation based on whether or not or how much someone invests, you actually need to be licensed as a broker dealer with FINRA. And otherwise, there is such a thing as a finder's fee, but finder's fees are very, very tricky. It's based on state law, so it's not a federal exemption. And you've got to be so careful with the finder's fee. So for example, let's say you do have a referral that you want to send to me. You give me the name and I pay you for the name. You shouldn't be pitching. You shouldn't be talking about how great I am, how great my deal is. You shouldn't be doing any of the pitching at all. It is really just you're getting paid for a name, and you get paid regardless of whether or not that person invests. That's very important. And you shouldn't get paid any more or any less, either whether they invest or based on how much they invest. So finder's fees are really tricky. So even disclosing that you've received a referral fee, that's not really necessarily the requirement. It's the fact of receiving that transactions-based compensation. It requires a license for the most part.
Got it. We've got another question here from AV just above.
Are the funds protected by weather scenarios, acts of...
Actually, it's the same gal running it. She's an SE.
Wait, thank you.
Yes.
Are the funds protected by weather scenarios, acts of God, or delays in certain transactions in order to finish the work for said property? Is your fund protected by these things? I think what you probably mean, are you protected from what, a suit by investors if there's a delay based on acts of God or weather or anything else? If that's what you're asking, in a syndication, we disclose all kinds of different risks, right? All the things that could require or that could cause the deal to lose money, to be delayed, all those things. And we let the investors know, hey, listen, when you invest in this deal, you're not going to have any say in the management. You're putting all of your trust in the operation of this deal, in the management. This is who the management is. You have to disclose that part. And then beyond that, this money's at risk. It's illiquid, which means you can't readily trade it, and you can't necessarily get bought out unless the manager tells you the circumstances on which you can get bought out. So you also have to disclose in the PPM and in the subscription agreement that there is a risk of losing some or all of this investment. And there's, unless the manager actively mismanages the property or the project or does something egregious, steals the money, spends it on a Ferrari, something that's really egregious, you're letting the investor know with all of these disclosures that the investment's at risk. they could lose it all. Right. And that's the purpose of it. Even if it is an act of God or certain other transactions, especially in like real estate development deals and things like that. So you should be protected. Your fund, your deal should be protected, or your management team should be protected for those kinds of things.
Bethany, I
Excellent.
think like in terms for our real estate clients, I think for me, the most two frequently asked questions I get is like, hey, I'm only raising money from 4 or 5 other people.
Yeah.
Does that, then I don't need to have a syndication? Or the other common one is I'm just borrowing money. So it's like I'm just raising debt money. So I don't need to have a syndication. Any comments on either of those?
That's a good question, or a good point. I get those questions both a lot too. And the first scenario is a security is a security is a security, meaning if the person in the deal is passive and they are expecting a return based on someone else's efforts, it's still a security. Now, there are situations where you can choose which disclosures to give. Do you need a full-blown PPM necessarily? Maybe not. If you only have a few investors and everybody is verified as accredited, you could get away with doing sort of high-level risk disclosures. In a 506C offering where everybody is verified as accredited, you get to choose which risk disclosures you give. That said, it's a lot simpler. It sounds a lot simpler than it really is, meaning anything you say to the investors, now you have to make sure you say anything, you say everything, or you give enough context to make sure that whatever you do say isn't misleading without further context. So once you start talking about the deal, then it's going to trigger a possible disclosure or disclaimer for all the other things. So if you start talking about returns, for example, you've got to put some disclaimers on there. So we do have situations where someone's saying, I'm only raising a couple $100,000. They're all accredited. There's 2 or 3 people. We can do a high-level risk disclosure as part of the subscription agreement rather than a full-blown PPM. That is something that we can do. But that said, it's still a security. On the other side of that is you don't get out of calling it a security just because it's a note. The actual definition of a security, the first word in that definition is note. So that means that just calling it debt doesn't necessarily mean it's not a security. Still, if someone's passive and they're expecting a return, there are some ways that notes would not be considered securities. If they're the first position in the real estate is one way. So that's not considered a security. If it's a short-term note, less than 9 months, it could maybe not be considered a security. So there are things to do to keep it out of the securities realm. And so what I do with our clients is if they come to me, they're like, look, this is not worth how much it's going to cost me to be compliant. I want to figure this out. Just because someone doesn't want to do the compliance doesn't mean that they can call it a JV or something else. It either is a security or it isn't. However, if you don't like your circumstances, you can change your facts. So we can change facts to make it not a security if it makes sense to do that, meaning give everybody an active role is one way, have it be a short-term note, give it a first position, some things that we can do. So if it's at all possible and you don't want to have it be considered a security because you don't want to do the compliance, or maybe the deal doesn't pencil with compliance or whatever, we can talk about how to keep it out of that world. But just because you don't want to comply does not mean it's not a security.
Hey, it looks like you've got a follow-up question from Ravi.
Here we go. That might be just to you, Kaaren, because I don't see it.
He says, just to follow up on that, can we provide a discount on the management fee if someone refers a candidate and the candidate makes an investment?
That still could be considered transactions-based compensation. So any kind of compensation, it could be a car, it could be dinner, it could be GP units, could be a discount on the management fees. So if it is any kind of benefit in exchange for the fact that someone is investing or how much they're investing, could be considered transactions-based compensation. So a discount on the management fees is typically not going to be allowed. There are some things you can do if you want to be able to get compensated for raising capital. One of them is become a registered broker dealer. Another is actually to create a fund of funds and take a fee at the fund level. But that's a whole, I do a whole live just on that. So we can probably get into that if people are interested in talking about fund of funds.
Right. Let's hit self-directed IRAs. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. So self-directed IRAs are one vehicle that help you invest in syndications and a lot of other alternative assets. And the thing of it is that self-directed IRAs are just like regular IRAs. They're created at the same time, like 50 years ago. So if you think that this is something new, it absolutely isn't. So the difference between a typical IRA and a self-directed IRA is that self-directed IRAs do let you invest outside of Wall Street. And syndications, as Bethany is illustrating for us, are really the #1 asset class for our entire industry. Notes are up there too, and real estate, of course, and precious metals, other things, performing and non-performing debt, all different kinds of assets are included in the alternative asset class that you can use a self-directed IRA for. And the barrier to entry is pretty small. You just have to have earned income, and then you can contribute to an account. But to invest, you have to have obviously enough to invest. And sometimes, as Bethany pointed out, sometimes you need to be an accredited investor. And that requires you have a certain income and net worth and so forth. So to be a self-directed IRA investor, pretty straightforward. If you already have an IRA or a 401k or some sort of employer plan, you can roll that over, transfer it into a self-directed IRA, and then invest in one of these alternative assets. And there are a lot of rules about how you do it. I can touch on those briefly. If you've got any questions, let me know. But essentially, it's a game of keep away, right? We want to like keep away from prohibited transactions, which is dealing directly with disallowed people like your ascendants and descendants, right? Your parents and grandparents and their spouse, you and your spouse, children and grandchildren and their spouses. So you don't do business, your IRA doesn't do business directly with these disallowed people, and disallowed people don't provide services to the plan. So say Bethany is creating her own syndication and she wants to use her IRA to invest, and she's already a decision maker. So for Bethany to want to put her own IRA in that deal would be prohibited. She would be a disallowed party because she's offering services to the plan. So at UDirect, what we do is when you want to invest in a deal, we will offer you a 20-minute free consultation so we could talk to you about your deal, who are the principals, and sort of listen to see, if we can hear if a prohibited transaction seems to be imminent. And if it is, we'll, talk you through it and maybe, talk about some alternatives. But basically, you just want to keep things arm's length. But it's a great way to build your portfolio. You're not just stuck with some mutual funds and index funds and so forth. You really have a lot of creative leeway here. And what's even better is you can use self-directed IRAs. Again, like Bethany said, is OPM, other people's money. That's like a $40 trillion pool of retirement in American savings. And you can tap into this. So pretty easy to do it. In order to do that, you would ask the question of your investor. You say, hey, do you have an IRA or do you have a 401k with a previous employer? And if your investor says yes, then they may not even know they can, but you can explain it to them, or we can explain it to them for you, that yes, you can take that money and invest in that alternative deal. And that's the way that just thousands of asset sponsors raise capital every day. I'll kind of stop there and hear from Amanda, and we can pick it up as we go forward. And of course, hey, we got a question from AV. Are there any tax concerns when it comes to rolling over to a self-directed IRA? Appreciate the question. The answer is no. A custodian to custodian transfer is not taxable. But if you take the money personally and then move it to the self-directed custodian, that's called an indirect rollover. And you have to get the money into another retirement account within 60 days. And you can do an indirect rollover once every 12 months. So that's for all your accounts combined. So you only get one chance to do that in a 12-month period.
Okay. I love that you said that, Kaaren, about, as someone who's looking to raise money, that IRA account holders is probably one of the best, like, hidden pots of money, because we talk to clients about that all the time, for an investor, whether it's you wanting to find more money for a good deal that you see yourself, then you can use that, your own IRA or your own 401k that rolls into a self-directed IRA, use it to buy a rental property or a syndication. But for a lot of our clients who syndicate, I always tell them, Kaaren Hall, for example, is a really great person to know and befriend. Why? Because her whole business is about people with idle cash in their retirement accounts that are looking to place into deals like real estate. I think for my part, because I represent both our clientele at Keystone, we represent both just the everyday investor who is looking to put their money into real estate deals, as well as the sponsor syndicators who are looking to raise investor money. I kind of see it from both sides of it. I love, Bethany, that you talked about other people's everything, OPE, because, you know, as investors, we're all really good about leverage, right? Leveraging the bank's money, leveraging other people's money to get into deals. But I think it was such an important point you brought up, leveraging, you know, if I'm an investor, I mean, which I am, I also invest in other people's syndications. I also use my retirement money for real estate. And for me, like a lot of our other clients, is the ability to leverage other people's expertise, like the sponsor group, finding the deals, vetting the deals, running the whole project. A lot of times that's priceless, right? Because my money otherwise was just sitting in the stock market, you know, being subject to the different fluctuations of it. I do think, though, that passive investments, and in this case, we'll talk about syndications as our main asset class. They do kind of get a bad rep when it comes to taxes. And I think the reason for that is you have a lot of CPAs who will tell their clients, like, don't invest in syndications because you don't get any of the tax benefits of investing in real estate. And that's actually not true at all. In fact, as a passive investor in a syndication deal, the sponsors are doing all the strategies. They're doing all the depreciation acceleration, maximizing the expenses and write-offs. So really, you get all those tax benefits sort of, you know, all tidied up in a package in the form of a K-1 that shows your tax benefit for that specific year. And so a lot of times we'll see clients who say, hey, you know, I invested in this syndication. I had a distribution of cash of $5,000. How much taxes do I pay on that? And they're shocked to find out that they actually don't pay any taxes on it because the K-1 itself will show a loss from the strategies that the sponsors are doing, right? So it's really important to understand that there absolutely are tax benefits when you're a passive investor. When we hear CPAs talk about the fact that there's no benefits of being a passive investor, most of the time what they're saying is that, you know, if you invested in an apartment syndication and you get a K-1 that shows a big loss, that loss may not offset your W-2 income for tax purposes. Okay? There certainly are times where that could offset W-2 income, but when CPAs say that, they're just saying, hey, I don't think this loss, the tax loss on the return, is going to offset W-2 income. And so although that could be true, you know, if you're someone who is a high income earner, the only investment you have is like some syndication apartment deal on the side, it's likely that that loss does not offset your W-2 income in the year that, you know, you get that K-1 loss. But it's really important to understand that in that statement, that person is just looking at a tunnel vision of that specific year. Because the reality is you've now invested in an asset that generated cash flow and maybe distributions to you, and you didn't have to pay taxes on that money, right? And so I think we can all agree that if we're saying, hey, I made more money this year, but I didn't have to pay taxes on that money I made, that certainly is a form of tax savings. And we actually have a lot of clients who are, you know, maybe like a high income earner who also invests in other businesses or even other real estate. So one example is we have one of our clients is a doctor. He invests in a lot of different surgery centers and medical practices where he gets a lot of passive income every year. And guess what? Because he invests in syndications passively, those passive tax losses that are strategically created by the syndication does offset his passive income in these other investments that he makes. So I think really important for all of us to understand here that, you know, just because all you do is passive syndication investments as an investor, there certainly could be tax benefits. And even if it cannot offset your W-2 income or your other income or your retirement income, it certainly could still offset taxes from your rental income, which I think is, you know, for most of us here, that's our goal, right? We want more passive income from rentals, from other businesses. And so just kind of be wary of that. If you hear people tell you there's no benefit in being a passive investor, there certainly could be. For those of you with us who are sponsors, this is, you know, these are really great stories for you to share when you're talking about your deals, right? Because a lot of times the prospective investor CPA might be giving them wrong advice. I always tell our syndication clients, like, hey, you cannot give tax advice. You're not a CPA. But you can share stories with them so that they can talk to their CPA. Right? We're never guaranteeing you can save money or you can do this or that, but there are scenarios where it could certainly be beneficial. So with that, I think we'll go to our Q&A.
We do have some questions.
Yeah, lots of questions.
But, lots of questions.
Let's start up here. Okay. Let's see. Are there tax concerns? We already addressed that. And says, hello, good evening. Getting ready to retire from my W-2. I have an annuity when I leave city services. Will I be able to put this annuity in a self-directed IRA? And the answer to that is, well, it depends. What you want to do is take a look at the annuity and see if you have any surrender penalties and look into that. But if your annuity is within a retirement account, you could cash it out, change it to cash, and move the cash into a self-directed IRA. So just take a look at the process that your custodian has and see what fees they might charge you to do that, to exit. That would be my recommendation. Okay, and let's see. We got a bunch of them. Let's see. Can you roll a deferred compensation plan into a self-directed IRA? Yes, you can, as long as you've left the service of the company. You can roll a plan like that into a self-directed IRA. Another question here, how would a financial advisor recommend funds to their clients? I think that's for Bethany.
Oh, I don't know. Well, so I think maybe that is, I don't know. How would
Maybe an RIA, you think?
maybe. So financial advisor, I mean, you can recommend a syndication to your clients as a financial advisor. One, you're most likely not going to get paid for that referral, but two, most brokers where your license sits are going to have a provision where you're not going to be allowed to sell away, is what they call it. So it's difficult for financial advisors to refer to alternative assets. I love that real estate's called an alternative asset. That makes me crazy. But in any event, it's difficult for financial advisors to make those recommendations from a professional standpoint. Kind of to Amanda's point a little bit ago, you can tell stories about what's worked for you, even if you're a financial advisor, and say, hey, listen, I made a bunch of money investing passively in real estate deals. You can do that, but you wouldn't be able to collect a fee for it from either side, more than likely, just because of the broker dealer laws, and then where your license sits mostly wouldn't allow you to sell away. If that was for me, that's my answer.
Yeah, I think I'll just kind of share what I see as a CPA. So one of the biggest, I guess, obstacles in working with investors over the last, 20 years is finding financial advisors who will advise on real estate. And I think, Bethany, you said the two keywords, sell away. They're not allowed to actually be selling other products that's not under their, broker dealer. And if they do, they'll get in serious trouble with it. And so for that reason, there are always financial advisors who will come to us and say, I want to talk to your clients. I love real estate. But when the clients start working with them, they're like, oh, you already have too much real estate. Now we got to get you into stocks and annuities and things like that. So we want to be really careful when we're talking with financial advisors. But yes, the good ones who will help guide you, they're usually not compensated like any kind of fee or whatever based on the recommendation. So we do see that with like RIAs who are fee-based. So they're just helping you with planning overall. They don't care. They don't get a cut of whatever you invest in.
Yeah, fee-based is definitely my typical recommendation, where they're not selling a product and making their money on the product they sell.
There you go. Hey, Amanda, you want to take this one? It says, what are the tax benefits to investors of using their self-directed IRA to invest in real estate?
Yeah, great question, Ray. So when we put money into our retirement account, whether it's a regular IRA, a 401k, or a self-directed IRA, that's typically when we get the tax benefit, right? So for example, I'm going to contribute $6,000 into my IRA this year. I'll get a tax deduction for it. And so that's the benefit of contributions, is we're getting a deduction up front. Now then, when I take that $6,000 and I use it to invest in real estate, I don't get another deduction, right? Because that's money I already deducted previously. And so that money will invest in real estate. If it's a rental property or a syndication, all the cash flow that goes back into that retirement account will be growing tax deferred. So that's the second benefit. I don't have to pay taxes on that right now. So 100% of whatever that property or asset makes, it will continue to grow within my retirement account. The tax hit comes eventually upon retirement when you start taking it out as distribution. So let's say my 6,000 grows to 30,000, And in my first year of retirement, I'm going to take out $3,000 of it. That $3,000 is what's going to become my taxable income. And that's what I'm going to pay taxes on. So that's the treatment of using self-directed IRA for real estate, which, is really the same as anything else, right? So if I use my IRA to invest in Apple stock, it's the same exact thing. I get a deduction when I contribute. That Apple stock I sell, I buy Tesla stock, that all is going to be growing tax deferred. Eventually, when I take it out, I'll pay taxes little by little based on how much I take out every single year. I think Kaaren,
You're muted.
Yeah, turning on the microphone makes it so much more interesting, doesn't it?
No, that was more interesting. I'm trying to see. I'm trying to
read
to see what
lips.
you were saying.
Alyssa says, once you exit a property, do we need to put the money back in the 401k or IRA, or can it stay out permanently? It needs to go back in because it belongs to the IRA. If you want to take it personally, put the money back in the IRA and then take a withdrawal from the IRA. Those proceeds belong to the IRA and not to you. And I wouldn't bypass your IRA when it comes to proceeds. They go back in the IRA. And again, if you want them, you can take a withdrawal. So, and that's probably taxable to you, most likely. Okay. Can the losses from depreciation be used to offset passive income that was generated from capital deployed from a self-directed IRA?
Congress has expressed an interest in legislating in this area.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello,
All
can you hear
kinds of
me?
excitement today.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. English. I tried to meet with your webinar earlier. I think you had one at 3 o'clock, maybe.
This is it.
This is the one. The 3 o'clock is now 6.
Pacific.
Yeah, Pacific.
Huh?
You're here. Welcome.
Yeah. I've been trying to log in all the time. Are you recording this so I can play it back later?
We sure are. And we'd be
Okay,
happy to
great.
send you a copy.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I won't interrupt. I'll let you proceed because I don't know where you're at right now, but I do
Okay, real good.
comprehend some of these things so I'm very interested in this passive income thing. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll share the copy of the recording with you and everybody who wants it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. So can the losses from depreciation be used to offset passive income that was generated from money in a self-directed solo K or self-directed solo K? So I guess, Trevor, if your question is if the depreciation is from the rental property owned within the retirement account, sure. If the retirement account happens to owe taxes for some reason, like if it invested in like leverage real estate or something like that, then yes, the depreciation does offset taxes from the income generated in the retirement account. Okay. Alternatively, if your question is Trevor owns a piece of property individually and there's depreciation, does it offset taxes from money within the retirement account? No, those are two completely separate things. You are your own taxpayer. The retirement account is its own taxpayer. So there's no overlap between the two, except for like when you put money in, you personally get a write-off. And when you take money out of the retirement account, that's taxable income to you. But other than that, my depreciation offsets my income. The IRA's depreciation offsets the IRA's. So hopefully that answers your question.
Looks like AV has a question. How long would the investor have to wait until the investor sees an increase in the self-directed IRA account? Is it monthly, quarterly, yearly passive income? Is it longer than a year? So I think what that really depends upon is, it is self-directed. So as a self-directed investor, you're going to choose that asset. And when you choose that asset, you're going to discuss with the asset sponsor when you're going to expect a return. And a self-directed IRA, it's an account that's going to sit there until you select an asset. And then you're going to invest. So again, it all depends upon the terms of the deal that you've invested in. So each deal can be different, no two the same. And so there's the answer to that one. Here we've got, what's your name here? AV, getting ready to retire. Oh, heck. Did I lose it? Do you see it, Amanda?
The next question's interesting. CH says, my husband's financial advisor says he's not comfortable investing in a syndication. I would say then your husband's financial advisor shouldn't.
Yeah.
But you certainly could.
Right.
They should not do it. But yeah, I think CH, that's a perfect example. I mean, I hear this all the time, you know, where it's like supposedly an advisor who really understands real estate, but at the end of the day, they're going to tell you, I'm not comfortable with this deal for this reason, not comfortable with that deal for that reason, and you're just better off leaving in the stock market. So you just have to be, you know, you just have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and know who the advice is coming from and understand how they're being compensated too.
Yeah. Keep in mind that most financial advisors are only getting paid once you purchase a product they're selling, and they're not selling syndications. So their interests aren't necessarily aligned with your interests if they're not fee-based.
Amanda, we've got a question just for you here. It's, hey, it says, good to see you again. It's from, I can't, nearsighted, sorry, not seeing it, but it says, I'm 56 now. I'm retired. I'm planning to do a Roth conversion this year from my 457 account. Would you please clarify the 5-year rule specifically if I do a conversion at 56? Do I need to wait until 61 to withdraw the contribution / conversion? And or am I allowed to withdraw the funds in 3.5 years at 59.5? Good question.
Typically you can take it out at 59.5 without having to wait. I guess the
5-year rule,
scenario
though, for
just
Roth.
seems weird because, oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a 5-year rule for Roth, so I think that's what he's talking about.
The scenario just seems weird because typically, if we're going to go through the hassle of converting to Roth, the better strategy is to leave it in the account, right? Because we're converting to Roth, we're paying taxes. Now, once it's a Roth, we want that to be Roth for as long as possible because I want that to grow tax-free. If I'm just going to convert to Roth and take it out into my personal name a year or two later, then I'm taking that back out into a taxable environment, right? So all else equal, if I have money in a Roth bucket, I'm going to invest in this rental property. That might make more sense for me because it's just all going to be growing tax-free for the rest of my life and maybe, a couple of years after I pass away for my beneficiary's life. Versus if I take it out in cash and then I buy real estate, well, even though I get depreciation, at some point I might sell, I might have taxable income. So those are the more the things that I would definitely kind of consider, right? Typically it's like, I'm going to convert it to Roth, then I want to try to leave in there as long as possible, right? Unless if it's like, I really need it to for living.
They've got a second question. Are there any issues investing in multifamily syndications, ATMs, et cetera, in a Roth, such as UBIT and UDFI?
Oh man, so if we're talking about IRAs, so Roth IRA or just regular IRAs, yes, there is unrelated debt financing tax. I know we didn't really cover that so far. That in itself is probably an 8-hour class that Kaaren can teach on. But effectively,
Sure.
if you're using IRA or Roth money to invest in something that involves leverage, so the asset is not just your money, but also some kind of borrowed money from a bank or other investors, then there is a tax called unrelated debt financing tax. So yes, it does occur in IRAs as well as Roth IRAs. And that shocks a lot of people because you're thinking of Roth, I've already paid taxes, I don't have to pay taxes. But this is a separate kind of tax, it's not an income tax. And the other kind of sister tax that's within that category is unrelated business income tax, and those kind of kick in when you invest in something that creates ordinary income. So ordinary income, an example would be an ATM business, McDonald's business, anything that's not investment income like rentals and notes and things like that. So definitely, got to kind of think more about that. Before you make those types of investments. What we typically tell clients is like, hey, if you're investing in something you're unsure, you can ask the sponsor, like, where's it going to show up on my K1, right? I'm investing in a syndication. Where's it going to show up on my K1? If it shows up as like ordinary income or loss, then we generally have to be concerned and plan ahead for unrelated business income taxes.
We've got a question here from Bobby. And I think you and I can answer this pretty quickly, Amanda, but Bobby says, do you recommend cashing out a 401k? I would say it depends, but no, if you want to invest, roll it over. But what do you say, Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. But yes, I also agree. I rarely recommend cashing out retirement account. Because I mean, it took a long time for you to accumulate it, right? To put it in every single year. So the benefit is we want it to be growing tax deferred. We have seen it where it's like, hey, I have a lot of real estate losses I can use. I have no income. Then one of the strategies we look at is, can we convert that money to Roth and have it grow tax-free forever? But even then, that's not cashing out. Like what I said earlier, it's leaving it in the retirement account so that it could continue to grow. So outside of that, yes, there are times when people kind of need to cash it out for living expenses, but it's usually not like a recommendation for someone to do that. It's based on the need to do it.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Because
Yeah.
May I? Yeah. Okay. So I own rentals and I have a business as well in healthcare. So the intention, because I've been dabbling with the world of real estate the past couple of years. If you're cashing out the monies to invest in real estate, in a cash flowing real estate opportunity, would that be worthwhile to do? If not, I guess if I want to transfer the traditional 401k to a Roth IRA, what would the tax implications be, if any?
So because I mean you look young, so I'll assume that if you take it out
What
now.
is young? What is young? Young is no,
yeah.
I'm kidding.
Young enough to pay penalties, let's say that. So if you're taking it out before retirement age, yeah, so you're looking at taxes and penalties on it. Now, if you were investing, let's say you're investing in short-term rentals and you're able to use the short-term rental loophole, and then whatever real estate you buy can offset the taxes. Yeah, so you can offset the taxes from the distribution. That could make sense. However, keep in mind, you are now taking that money into a taxable environment. So even though I have depreciation, at some point it's going to become taxable. And so you're taking it out into an area where now at some point we'll have to be concerned with taxable income from the short-term rental. The other thing to consider is that the rental losses never offsets penalties. Okay, so you can have a lot of losses to offset the income, but the penalties will still remain. I think maybe two other alternatives to consider, maybe like borrowing from your 401k. If it allows for it, you could do a tax-free, penalty-free loan, use that for real estate. Or if you don't need the cash flow to live off of, then yeah, if you're able to roll it over into a self-directed IRA, it's a tax-free, penalty-free way for you to get that into real estate as well. So hopefully that helps, but yeah, that's a very in-depth conversation, that you want to kind of do tax planning on. And, these are the kinds of things that we do planning with for our clients all the time. It's really taking like a holistic look at where's all your money, what are you going to invest in, what's the time frame, and then coming up with a plan that's like, okay, here's what I should be doing and what year should I be doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Here's a question from RB. Says, oh gosh, now I lost it. All right. Oh, what do you
so
do you
many
see it, Bethany?
questions. I keep scrolling.
I know.
I know. Where did RB's question go? It's down here. Okay.
If you
It
have,
says if you have two or three, you want to read that, Bethany?
Yeah.
yeah,
Bethany.
if you have a combination 401k, IRA, Roth, do they need to be consolidated into one self-directed IRA to invest? Yeah,
they don't have to. You can combine them, but if there's different tax treatment like Roth and pre-tax, they have to be in their own separate accounts. You're not going to put a Roth into a pre-tax account. So the 401k, if it's pre-tax, and the traditional can go together, and the Roth would be separate. So that's the answer.
Awesome.
So Patty says, I recently retired and had the option to annuitize the DBS withdrawal and roll it over. I rolled it over to an IRA. And will it transfer to a self-directed IRA? Yes, it sure will. Absolutely. It's very easy to do. That's just if it's in an IRA now, it would just be an IRA to IRA transfer. So yes. Let's see, what's this next question? All right. Are you finding it, Bethany? Do you see
Yeah,
it?
it looks like they some of these were answered. We're just a little bit out of order. I think the next one that wasn't already answered is Matt's. Will I get a 1099 from the self-directed IRA account? What other documentation is going to be needed at the end of the year for taxes?
Yeah, you'll get a 1099 anytime there's a taxable event in a self-directed IRA. And the other documentation we need is a valuation, because self-directed IRAs are alternative assets. They're not market-based assets. And so we don't know the value. You need to tell us what the value of your asset is. So every November 1st we start to request valuations. And it's really important to get those in a timely manner, because especially if you're in your RMD phase, because whatever your required minimum distribution is, that's if you're in your 70s and you have to take these, but it's going to be based on your year-end value. So you want to make sure we have an accurate year-end value, so your required minimum distributions are the accurate amount. So we would also need the valuation from you.
What about K1 documents? How are those handled?
They're usually sent from the asset sponsor to you, and you can forward them to the self-directed IRA, to your custodian or to us. And that'll tell us, for example, if you have UBIT or UDFI, right, Amanda?
Well, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So it's really important to make sure you're working with a CPA who understands like self-directed investing and the whole UDFI, because there are a lot of times, unfortunately, that we see K1s that just doesn't have that information. So we go back and ask the sponsor CPA for it. But yeah, speaking of 1099s and K1s, for those of you who are passive investors, in a couple of weeks or in the next few months, you're going to be getting K1s from the sponsors. Don't just throw it in a folder, guys. Take a look at it and specifically look at the recipient's name. We see this pretty frequently where it's like, hey, maybe Bethany invested in this deal through her retirement account, but the K1 is issued to the individual name. Well, guess what? Now you have a mismatch, and maybe the IRS is expecting you to report it on your personal return. So look at it early so that you can then go back to your sponsor and say, hey, this should have been in my retirement account, or maybe that should have been in, ABC LLC that I created last year that maybe you didn't tell them about. So it gives them time to make those corrections. And I think on the same note, for those of you here who are sponsors, give your investors a deadline. This we tell them all the time. K1 came out to you today. Within the next 3 weeks, let me know if there are changes or corrections with, you got married and your name is no longer the same, or, IRA versus your LLC and all that good stuff. So definitely things to kind of keep in mind, in the next couple of weeks when we're all, receiving and issuing K1s.
The other thing too, as the counsel, securities counsel for the sponsors, one thing that we offer that almost no one ever takes us up on is at the end, and whoever your attorney is should do this, at the end of your deal, we will actually audit all of your documents to make sure they were signed properly, so that your subscription agreement matches, your operating agreement matches anything else that they've told you that they want, so that when you do go to your K1, Amanda has the right information to be issuing them the right place, so you don't have to go back and change things. So if there are changes later, there's something we can do about that. But in the beginning, I cannot tell you how often I see where someone signed in their individual name and they meant to put it in their trust and now it's not in there. And so just let us audit it for you. It's included.
It looks like Caleb has his hand up. Caleb, you want to go ahead?
Hey guys, yeah, sorry, my son is slapping my desk here, so hopefully you can hear me. Thanks. So I thought I heard you say early on, Kaaren, that if we have a self-directed IRA and we are a GP on a deal, there's either red tape or that's just not acceptable for you to be able to do. Is that accurate?
Right. It is accurate. It's because you are offering services to the plan, so you're disallowed. Your IRA is disallowed in that investment because of your personal participation. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
You know what? I got a message offline. I think this is for you, Bethany. Let me go over. It says international investing, Jamaica, Airbnb or real estate or other business opportunities. Mr. English says he's very interested in private investors and where to find some group to meet people and meet investors. What do you have to say about meeting investors?
Well, I mean, if you have an offering, then you want to make sure that you're prepared for that offering. If you're specifically looking overseas for investors, then I can't tell you how to go find your investors, but I can tell you how to stay compliant when you're pitching to them. I mean, I suppose you could join any kind of group, but when you have an offering that's specifically geared towards overseas investors, you could actually do something that's a little bit less onerous than the Reg D that I talked about earlier. For US investors, it's a Reg S, like Sam, and you still have to give some risk disclosures, although frankly, the SEC does not care nearly as much about non-US investors as it does about US investors. And so you would be it'd be a little less onerous there. However, you have to be careful that you're not inadvertently violating the laws of some other country. So for example, if you're going to take out, ads or billboards or whatever in a foreign country, you need to make sure you're not violating that country's securities laws. So you want to invest in Jamaica. Investing in Jamaica is different than having Jamaican investors. So I want to make sure I'm clear on what you can use US investors to invest in Jamaica. That's no big deal. The process will be the same. If you're using US investors, the compliance process is the same, whether the property's in the US or whether it's in Jamaica. The risk disclosures might be a little bit different because the rules in Jamaica for property ownership or the risks might be a little bit different for a Jamaican property than for US property. But barring any other differences, if it's US investors, your requirements are going to be the same.
Okay. All right. Joe says if you liquidate stocks and then invest the proceeds as LP on a syndicated deal, is it possible to offset the capital gains with depreciation?
Great question. It depends. So if you or your spouse is a real estate professional, it may be possible for you to use syndication losses to offset all types of income, and that would include capital gain on sale of stocks. If you are not, you or your spouse are not a real estate professional, then no, they're in two different buckets. So people are often confused by that because, there's different kinds of capital gains. So in this scenario, you're saying you're selling stock capital gain. That's different of a bucket than if you sold real estate for a capital gain, right? So if the facts where you sold a piece of property had capital gains and you invested in a syndication, then they always offset each other. But when it comes to stocks, it's a different tax designation. So that only works if you or your spouse is a real estate professional. I know we didn't talk about real estate professional status here, but I have a lot of information on my website. So if the whole, real estate professional term is new to you, I'll put a link in our chat box so you can access our free tools that kind of go further in depth into like what is real estate professional and all that good stuff.
Awesome. Maxine says she recently converted her IRA to a self-directed IRA with UDirect. Yay. And she says, did someone just say that I can borrow against the funds in the self-directed IRA account? No, we did not say that. You don't borrow money from an IRA. You can, if you can take a personal distribution once in 12 months for 60 days. It's not much of a loan, but no, you don't borrow against an IRA. Okay, and then we've got.
I think we were talking about borrowing against your 401k or solo 401k. So that's the difference.
And yeah, so and Amanda put a really nice link in there for a definition for the real estate professional. And see, Ravi. Okay. Maybe this was for you, Bethany, but going back to the referral question, you want to take this one? Want to grab it?
Yeah. So he's asking, can he take a reduced carried interest if someone refers an investor, I assume, and they make an investment. So instead of a 15% carried, take a 13%. So you're still giving them a 2% kicker in exchange for the investment. So it would still be compensation. So no, you can't do it that way. Now, that said, you can give a kicker to a large investor if it's their own money, but you can't give it in exchange for someone out raising money for you. So if they're acting like a broker dealer, doing broker dealer activity, meaning they're out finding investors or referring investors to you, you cannot pay them any kind of compensation that is in exchange for that activity.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time. We have like literally 1 minute. Why don't we all just write our contact information in the chat and make sure everybody is able to get a hold of us. So we've got Keystone, UDirect, and Bethany will put hers in. But there's just so many questions. This is an area where I'm sure we could talk for hours because there are so many nuances and so forth. And that's why every deal is a little bit different. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, every deal
Alright.
is a little bit different. I recently finished writing an ebook on tax strategies for passive investors. So for those of you interested in passive investing, the book covers what types of strategies, what type of income can be offset by passive investment. So you could just download that ebook for free. For those of you who are syndicators, this is a really great tool for you to kind of understand, like I said earlier, sharing stories with potential investors. Our ebook is filled with different client stories on how an investor could potentially use your syndication to offset some of their taxes. So you can just download that link. And our firm's name is Keystone CPA, Keystone CPA. You can check it out there. Or if you're looking for daily tax tips, you can follow me on Instagram as Amanda Han CPA, also on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff, but
You're everywhere. And Bethany, how can
Love it.
everybody get a hold of you?
If you want to see tips on using passive investors to create wealth, I would recommend Instagram, Bethany_LaFlam on Instagram, also on Facebook and LinkedIn. I guess soon to be on TikTok, I'm told. And the email to best reach me is bethany@plglp.com. I also do host a free live every Wednesday for Q&A at bethanylaflam.com/live. And join Amanda and myself tomorrow at 4:00 Pacific on Bubbles with Bethany, where you can hear more information about Amanda and have a chance to ask questions as well. And that link is at the beginning, but it's bethanylaflam.com/bubbles.
Awesome. And guys, I'll be sending out the link to the recording as soon as it bakes in the Zoom oven here, and we'll zip it out. Any last comments, ladies?
Thanks so much for putting this together. I really enjoy being with you ladies, and all of you, thanks for showing up tonight.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay, have a great night.